Before I start this video, don't forget to comment anything. Your comments make my video go further on the platform. And this anime here follows the life of an aspiring samurai called Shin. The current year is 1564, and he's hiding in some bushes, intending to take down some bandits on the road. His dream is to become a famous hero, but he suddenly stops when he hears the bandits arguing with two people, one of whom is a fox spirit called Tama, and the other is a boy called Jinka, who introduces himself as Tama's younger brother. Tama confronts the bandits, telling them to give up living as bandits and look for more honest work. The bandits laugh at the girl, who tries to lecture them, and draw their swords, demanding that she hand over all her valuables. Jinka, without warning, hits one of the bandits with his staff, commenting that he can't listen to any more nonsense. He then throws 3 talismans on the ground, claiming that it's an apology. As soon as the talismans touch the ground, a spell is activated, absorbing the spiritual power of the earth. Then, 3 giant bronze fists appear out of nowhere, hitting the bandits hard, throwing them away and knocking them out. Tama isn't satisfied with what Jinka has done, and hits him, asking how they're going to find the location of the bandits' boss now. Despite her frustration, she realizes that complaining isn't going to help anything, if only all women were like that. But because she's different from any normal woman, Tama decides to carry on. Shin, who was watching everything, is impressed by the supernatural powers he has just witnessed, and decides to follow them to find out more. And although Tama detects his presence, she initially decides to ignore him. And when they take a break near a river, Tama gets tired of being watched and decides to act. She picks up a rock and throws it into the bushes, landing a nice headshot on his face, which forces him to reveal himself. He introduces himself and asks about the technique they used to defeat the bandits. And Jinka says it's none of his business and tries to leave, but Shin offers to tell him about the bandits' hideout in exchange for knowing more about them. Jinka then introduces himself as a wise warrior and Tama as a fox spirit. She being his sworn elder sister, Shin starts to laugh, thinking they're joking, but Tama quickly threatens him with a spell, saying she'll turn a branch into a snake if he continues. Shin, terrified, begs her to spare him, all without realizing that the snake is just a magic trick. With the deal done, Shin leads them to the bandits' hideout and points out that their boss is the man wearing a samurai helmet. Jinka warns Shin to stay back as he is weak. However, the indignant Shin shouts that he is strong enough to defeat the boss with just one blow. Her shout attracts the attention of the bandits, who quickly surround the invaders. Tama tries to resolve the situation peacefully. She approaches the boss and tries to talk to everyone, asking him and his gang to give up their life of crime and become good people. But the bandits move in to try to attack her. Jinka, for his part, intervenes by swinging his staff and pushing the enemies away. Meanwhile, Tama dodges the attacks, keeping out of the fight. One of the bandits tries to attack Shin from behind, but is knocked down by another who has been thrown into the air. Seizing the moment, Shin draws his sword, and with a single blow, he destroys the bandit's sword, helmet, and head. Full of confidence, he advances against the boss, but is surprised when 2 giant arms emerge from his helmet, blocking his sword. The boss then reveals his true form, a monstrous spirit. Tama and Jinka immediately recognize that they are dealing with a spirit. Tama asks Jinka if he can defeat it, and he says yes, as long as he uses her power. The spirit attacks first. Tama then bites his hand, allowing his spiritual energy to leak out along with his blood. The Jinka then sucks out the blood and energy, transforming Tama into a temporary human form and then into a super powerful fox spirit. The spirit chief orders the bandits to attack, but the Jinka takes them down with ease, just by swinging his staff. When the spirit tries to punch him with its giant arms, Jinka dodges and jumps high to counterattack, and although the spirit tries to resist, Jinka increases his strength and knocks him down, breaking his helmet in half. He then reverses his transformation, returning to his normal form alongside Tama. Finally, he sends the souls of the former spirit and the human who controlled him to the afterlife, and Shin, still shocked by everything he has seen, asks Tama why they are doing this. She explains that she likes humans, so she dedicates herself to eliminating evil people, be they spirits or humans. Jinka, on the other hand, says he likes spirits and hates humans, but he follows Tama as her younger brother. She declares that together they are the brothers who reformed the world, which leaves Shin completely baffled. Later, at the inn, the 3 overhear a farmer complaining about the gigantic monster they saw that morning. He says he hired a warrior monk to deal with the creature, but he was killed without even being able to scratch it. The farmer shows a drawing of the monster, a creature with 2 pairs of giant muscular arms and a single eye on its body. The warrior monks accompanying him recognize the creature as Shaka, Shako, and are furious to learn that their colleague has been killed. They prepare to hunt down the monster, while a worried Shin fears that the monks will mistake Tama for an evil spirit, but she reassures him, explaining that the warrior monks only attack spirits that threaten humans. She asks Shin why he's following them, and he quickly makes up an excuse, saying it's just a coincidence, and goes to sleep. Jinka gets annoyed with him, but Tama accepts that the boy has potential. The next morning, Shin wakes up a little late and discovers that the spirit brothers and the warrior monks have already left the inn. He runs after them, and finds the two groups staring at each other with looks of pure hostility, so he decides to hide to observe the whole situation. The warrior monks argue with Jinka, who believes that the monster called Shako may have already killed humans, but that's not reason enough to hunt it down. Tama interrupts him before he gets carried away, and asks the monks if they know of any reason why the monster Shako is attacking humans. The monks say they've been ordered to keep everything secret, and the two parties are at an impasse. Suddenly, a gigantic muscular arm appears behind Shin. He panics when he realizes it's the monster Shako. The monks rush to confront him, and one of them pushes Shin to safety. The monks use their spiritual power to try to trap the monster, but they're not strong enough. The monster Shako breaks free of the Zammer and repels them, so Tama asks Jinka to help the monk. Jinka advances against the monster, hitting it with his staff and skillfully dodging its blows. He throws several talismans into the air, summoning his bronze arms that trap Shako, but just as he's about to deliver the final blow, he feels something strange. It is at this moment that he catches the two unconscious monks and runs off at an impressive speed, leaving Shin behind. Shin runs after them in desperation, so they stop at a hut in the forest to rest, and Shin asks how Jinka manages not to look tired after carrying two adults and running so much. Tama comments that he's special and mentions that his master trained him very hard and rough, and reinforces that Jinka can take a lot of hard things on his back. The monks are shocked to hear that Jinka's master is Koko, a legendary warrior who has defeated countless evil entities, but Tama doesn't miss an opportunity and demands that the monks reveal everything they know about Shako. Inga, a senior monk, decides to tell the truth. He explains that Shako is a spiritually enhanced human created by the Dangai Temple. The temple was trying to transform humans with high spiritual potential into artificial spirits to increase their combat strength, but that monster, which originated in a grotto, ended up losing control, escaping and killing all the inhabitants of a village in revenge. Shin is furious to hear this, as he grew up believing that the weak don't deserve to live, and has vowed to become strong at any cost. He grabs Inga's collar, asking how they had the nerve to turn a grotto into a monster. The monks respond by saying that Shako was completely useless, and that the temple offered her a place to live, and now with hundreds of deaths in her name, they have no choice but to eliminate her. Tama intervenes, ordering Shin to stop, and tells the monks that she and Jinka have taken care of it. Inga didn't want to accept, but he eventually gave in, so the spirit brothers combine their powers to perform the spiritual transformation. Tama groans a little as Jinka absorbs her power, transforming into a super powerful fox spirit. At that moment, Shako appears, and Jinka immediately goes on the attack, and despite using his full strength, Jinka fails to cause significant damage, and Shako counters, throwing away the blow and preparing to fire a spirit cannon. Jinka reacts quickly, summoning a bronze punch that destroys Shako's attack, and even hits it in the process. The attack destroys Shako's monstrous parts, saving the human girl inside. The curious Shin approaches the girl, while the monks declare that they will take her back to the temple. The indignant Shin almost draws his sword against them, but Inga gives up, admitting that he doesn't stand a chance against Jinka. Tama checks that Shako is alright, and warns the monks that they will be punished for carrying out illegal human experiments. Inga tries to argue, but Jinka assures him that he can defeat the temple's 300 monks single-handedly if he has to. When Shako wakes up, she doesn't remember anything about being taken to the temple. She says she was returning home with vegetables when her father sold her to a monk. He promised to give her a place to belong and enough power to no longer be bullied. Her last memory was being put to sleep in the mountains, and Jinka explains to her everything that happened, and Tama comforts her, telling her that she doesn't need to worry anymore. After that, Shako guides the group to the temple headquarters, and Jinka is ready to confront the monks, but Tama instructs him to just scare them and give them a lecture. They enter the temple, and the warrior monks led by Inga attack Jinka. He uses a trick, letting them hit a paper doll instead of him, and the real Jinka appears on the roof, summoning a huge bronze fist that knocks down several monks. Inga takes out an old pistol and shoots Jinka in the leg. Despite this, the Jinka moves at high speed, knocking down the monks one by one, and as he prepares to attack Inga, a team of monks gathers energy for a spirit cannon and surprises him, hitting him full on. The result is a gigantic explosion, but Jinka is perfectly fine. He blows away the smoke from the explosion, then attacks the monks with a giant bronze arm. Tama and the others were watching the fight from a distance, and she used her fox ears to realize that Jinka had already passed through the gate and entered the temple. Shin is curious because he thought she had turned human by giving her power to Jinka, and she shows him that she has 2 pairs of ears, including human ears and fox ears, which serve as a reminder not to forget who she really is. Meanwhile, Jinka was approaching the temple's secret laboratory when a group of senior priests arrived on the scene. The head priest, Yanzan, sees Jinka and is not happy that the monks at the entrance let a simple boy like him in. He doesn't plan to fight him, and instead sends another monk, who turns into a goblin. He leaps towards Jinka and grabs him. The goblin monk tries to strangle him, but Jinka turns one of his tails into a wooden arm and grabs him. He strangles the monstrous monk, but by now he has lost a lot of spiritual energy. Inga and her partner go there and ask Jinka why he's so keen to attack their lab. But Jinka realizes that they're just trying to buy time for the reinforcements to arrive. However, he also needs to rest, so he does their bidding. Jinka declares that he is there to steal their research material to perfect his master's spiritual transformation technique. He wants to become a true spirit, unlike his current temporary transformation or the precarious technique the monk used before. With that, he has had enough rest and heads for the secret facility. But on the way he finds Izan standing guard. Jinka jumps high into the air and prepares to destroy the building. But suddenly the building begins to shake and rise above the ground. It turns out that a gigantic stone spirit has merged with the foundation of the building, and at Izan's command, it punches Jinka into the nearby mountain. As a result, his spiritual transformation is undone, and when Tama returns to her normal appearance, she fears that Jinka is unconscious or dead. Just then, another priest arrives to take Shako back to the temple. He is also a spiritually enhanced human and transforms into a hybrid of a wolf and a bear. His words resonate with Shako, and suddenly, memories of the time when she was a spiritually enhanced human come flooding back. Shin springs into action to save everyone and gets down on his knees, begging the wolf priest to let them go, because they're just a group of ordinary travelers who have no idea what's going on out there. He releases his grip, and Shin hugs him, still begging him to spare them. Tama tells him to leave, but he asks her to run or save him. The monster priest decides to kill him, but suddenly Shako's arm transforms into her monster form. She asks Shin to back off, then hits the monster priest with a powerful punch that sends him flying. Shako can barely control herself, and now she remembers all the horrible acts she committed when she was a monster. She killed the people who used to bully her, and even killed her greedy father. Remembering this makes her start to cry, so she runs away. Shin tries to chase after her, but Tama stops him, saying that it's better to let Shako deal with her painful memories in solitude. Nevertheless, Shin decides to help her and goes after her. After being left alone, Tama remembers the death of an old friend who taught her how fragile humans are and how it devastated her. On the other hand, Jinka is also dreaming about the past. When he was training with a legendary warrior, he had a furry monster as a friend and guardian who was killed by some human. Jinka was devastated when he heard this and discovered that the human who had dealt the final blow to his friend was still alive. Overcome by hatred and anger, he set out to seek revenge, and when he kills the man, his dream ends and he wakes up in a small puddle. He finds a piece of cloth in front of him, and the sub-priest Yanzan speaks to him through it. He is impressed that Jinka has withstood a blow from the castle spirit, and promises that he will end his life soon. Back in the forest, Shin is looking for Shako, when he suddenly trips over a tree root and rolls to the edge of the cliff where Shako was sitting. She runs away as soon as she sees him, and asks him not to go near her, because she's a monster and a murderer. Shin says she has nothing to do with it, since things happened when she was out of control. But Shako calmly remembers that she took the Dark Underpriest's hand when he offered her power, and that's why she blames herself for everyone's death. But Shin asks her what's wrong with wanting power. Suddenly, the rock above his feet cracks, and he slips off the cliff. He holds on for dear life, and instead of helping him, Shako runs away. The rocks break even more, and Shin falls. Fortunately, the fall was short, so he didn't die. Tama arrives to check on him, and stops him from going after Shako again, and asks why he's so worried about her, and he remembers seeing her crying, and that gives him a certain pain in his chest, so he thinks she should never be alone again. He says that spirits like Tama can't understand a human's feeling, and starts to run after her, but she hits him with a stick, and says that Shako has gone to the other side, so they run after her together. On the other hand, Jinka is trying to catch up with Tama, when out of nowhere Shako runs past him. That's when Shin shows up and arrests her. Shako threatens to sue him for harassment, but he says there's no such thing as a lawsuit in this world. He then tells her that it's right for her to seek power, because the weak are always oppressed, and that it wasn't her fault that she was subjected to a legal experiment. He starts to cry, saying that she hasn't done anything wrong, and Shako is also moved by the sight of him. As they cry and hold hands, Tama and Jinka remember the friends they've lost. Tama asks Jinka to reflect on the friends they had, and to realize that not all all humans are bad. Afterwards, Tama invites Shako to join them, but Jinka doesn't think it's safe to let her and Shin accompany them, because the assassins from the Dangai temple are after him. But Tama insists that Jinka prove that he has the power to protect everyone, and she also wants him to learn to live with humans. The next day, they arrive at the house where Jinka lived with his late master. He also starts training with Shin, using wooden swords, but soon knocks him down with ease. Meanwhile, Tama prepares a sleeveless dress for Shako, allowing her to transform her arms into their monstrous versions without difficulty. Later, while everyone is silent, a ghost-like spirit appears. He greets Tama and Jinka before informing them about an evil spirit that is demanding sacrifices from the villagers without offering anything in return. The ghost leaves after the warning, and Tama decides to go with Jinka to check out the evil spirit, leaving Shin and Shako behind to take care of everyday tasks. When they arrive in the village, they ask the locals to take them to the spirit's hiding place. The village chief believes that they will charge money for the service, but Tama replies firmly that they don't need payment. Instead, she suggests that the villagers be kind to them as a form of payment. The villagers then send a boy to accompany them to the spirit's hiding place. On the way, the boy throws a tantrum complaining that the spirit has eaten his mother and curses her for not getting there sooner. Tama, upon hearing this, slaps the boy and tells him that they are there to help, and if he has time to complain, he should work on becoming stronger. Soon, they arrive at the lake where the spirit lives, and the creature claims that it is eating the villagers in exchange for sparing the village from destruction. But Tama demands that he apologize or face the consequences. In response, the spirit spits a giant mud ball in her direction, and Tama doesn't even move. She just waits for Jinka to save her and the boy in time. Now he tells the spirit that no one else can save him because he dared to attack his sister. The spirit, surprised, spits out the woman it had swallowed earlier, and luckily she is still alive, but the spirit uses her as a hostage to make sure Jinka doesn't attack him. Suddenly, the boy kneels down, begging the spirit to free his mother and take him hostage instead. Tama then turns to Jinka, saying that he must decide what to do. Jinka plans to ignore the hostage and eliminate the spirit, but hesitates when he sees the boy crying. However, out of nowhere, another person appears and cuts out the spirit, rescuing the woman. This person comments that the student of the legendary warrior is not what he expected. The man is a ragged samurai, who, after landing in front of Jinka and Tama, reveals that he is an assassin sent by the Dangai temple. He declares that he will take the mother and child hostage, forcing Jinka to fight for them. With no alternative, Jinka accepts the challenge. They then make their way to an open field, where the man introduces himself as Redu, a mercenary who kills spirits and consumes them. Jinka, irritated, attacks immediately, but Redu dodges easily and begins to float. The Jinka uses a fire spell to propel himself forward, and launches one of his best attacks, but Redu counters with his magic sword that controls the flow of air, repelling Jinka with a strong blow of wind, and even blocking it with his bronze arm. Jinka can't hit Redu, who also dodges attacks using water magic. After an intense exchange of blows, both are exhausted, and Redu sheathes his magic sword, drawing his ordinary sword to show how dangerous humans can be. Jinka attacks angrily, but Redu dodges every blow and counterattacks, forcing Jinka to retreat, now showing how immature he is. Jinka loses control of his emotion. He abandons his defense and tries a desperate attack, but Redu completely dominates, putting his sword through Jinka's neck. Redu stops before hurting him, and says that he was lucky. Jinka falls to his knees in frustration, while Redu taunts him, asking Tommy to knock some sense into him. On the way back, Jinka is clearly devastated by his defeat. The next day, he isolates himself by the river, until Shako shows up to call him for breakfast. He tries to ignore her, but she drags him by the neck. Just then, a priest from the Dangai temple arrives with a letter of challenge. He demands that Jinka fight Redu again, this time with his life on the line. The priest mentions that the Yamato family will be destroyed if he doesn't fight, and Jinka replies that he doesn't care about the family that abandoned him. But the priest just laughs, saying that he must fight if he wants to save them. On returning home, Tama asks Jinka what he intends to do, and he says that he doesn't care about the Yamato family, but he won't accept being defeated by a human again. The next day, Jinka and Redu face each other again. Now Jinka also uses a sword, and on the first blow, he realizes he's made a mistake. He is quickly pushed back and receives a cut on his arm, and just as Redu is about to finish the fight, Jinka makes a desperate move, using his bronze fist to hit Redu and himself, which ends up knocking them both out. Due to the pressure of the battle, Jinka goes crazy and releases his spiritual energy, challenging Redu to fight him seriously again. Redu, however, gives up, admitting that he can no longer move. Redu then asks Jinka to kill him, but Jinka refuses, provoking him by saying that he's lucky lucky to be alive. Afterwards, Jinka returns to his friends, who celebrate his victory. Meanwhile, the priest delivers a letter to Radu, informing him that his sister has offered to complete his failed mission, and the priest says that she will certainly succeed in her mission, because she is one of the 4 leading beasts of the Dangai temple. Soon after this, Shin starts taking food to the wounded Radu in exchange for sword lessons with him. Tama and Jinka follow him unnoticed, but Jinka shouts loudly, which frightens Shin, and as soon as Shin notices him, he tries to explain that Radu is no longer his enemy. Jinka also knows this, and decides to take the wounded samurai to his home, giving him a comfortable bed to recover in. There, the Radu reveals that the members of his clan have stronger spiritual power than ordinary humans, which is why he volunteered to be a spirit hunter, while his sister became a nun at the temple. The priest told him that his sister was weak, and that her life was in their hands. With this threat, they made him do their dirty work, but after he lost, they revealed that his sister is now one of the 4 leading beasts. Now Radu warns Jinka that his sister, called Higan, will come after him, and then advises him to prepare. Tama does some mental calculation, and discovers that Higan is actually a spiritually enhanced human, just like Ashako. Out of nowhere, a tree monster invades their house, lies down on a bed, and reveals that a woman has thrown him out of her house and ordered him to send Jinka to her. Everyone immediately realizes that this woman must be Higan, and Jinka goes off in a rage to confront her. Radu and Ashako also decide to accompany him, leaving Shin in charge of the house's spiritual guest. Jinka and the others reach the top of the hill, where Higan is waiting for them. She is happy to see that her brother is still alive, but Jinka interrupts the meeting and demands that she start the fight. Tama shares her power with him, allowing him to transform. In response, Higan lifts her skirt and begins her own transformation, and in place of her legs, a giant stone hand appears, and she promises to take her brother to a place where he can live in peace after fulfilling his mission. Jinka is now ready to face her, but Ashako gets ahead of him. Ashako introduces herself as Kagan, the spirit sealed inside a human girl, and calls Higan's spirit Sojin, asking if he doesn't recognize her. And it's at this moment that Tama and Jinka realize that the temple is creating spiritually enhanced humans by sealing spirits inside them. Jinka is furious to discover this, and plans to kill Higan, but Ashako insists on fighting alone. She advances against Higan, and blocks his giant stone finger with one hand, while launching a spirit cannon with the other. However, Higan uses talismans to defend herself, and fires 4 spirit cannons at the same time. Ashako dodges the giant blast, climbs onto the stone arm, and attacks Higan at close range. She almost breaks through the talisman barrier, but Higan's stone hand begins to behave strangely, forcing Ashako to retreat. Meanwhile, Shin takes care of the tree spirit, feeding it worms. He goes out to get more, when out of nowhere he feels an intense pressure, and when he looks around, he sees a tall priest with white hair, and a boy with a sinister look on his face. When he makes eye contact with the boy, Shin sees a river of blood and falls to his knees. The priest and the boy walk away, while the tree spirit warns Shin about the smell of a dragon, telling him to run and warn Jinka and the others to evacuate immediately. Shin runs to the top of the hill and transmits the warning. Jinka panics when he hears about a dragon and tries to flee, but an intense spiritual wave sweeps through the area. The priest of Anum appears before them and informs Higan that she will be executed for murdering a high-ranking government official. He disappears and instantly reappears in front of Higan, punching her until she faints. Everyone is shocked to see her dragon transformation. Inum is now back to normal and confronts Jinka with the intention of killing him. Jinka panics and orders everyone to disperse, arranging a meeting point in the Cave of Losers. He uses smoke bombs to blind Inum and himself, and Shin and Radu attack the priest and dragon together. However, the boy Senyor runs through them all in an instant with his monstrous arm, only to discover that they were illusions created with paper dolls. While everyone gathers in the cave, Ashako manages to save Higan. However, she has lost her entire lower body and is on the verge of death. Radu asks her about the murder of the government official, and she admits to following the orders of her superiors. Higan reveals that she did it to stand out and get her brother out of the darkness of the underworld. Radu says he has no great ambitions and would be happy just living alongside her. Hearing this, Higan releases her reserve energy, declaring that she doesn't want to be with a loser like him. She tries to attack Tama to regain her strength, but Jinka stops her, stabbing her with his staff and pinning her against the rock. Before disappearing, Higan mumbles that she wanted to be human, and the spirit inside Ashako mourns her friend's death and blames Higan for consuming her. Tama comforts Ashako and tells Jinka that he must fight the dragon. Tama insists that they must defeat Junon to survive, even if the odds seem impossible. She then proposes a daring plan to break into the temple's laboratories, shut down their operation, steal their research material to prepare against the dragon. But Ashako interrupts this idea, saying that Higan's spirit wants to collect her friend's mortal gestures and take them to her house. Tama then decides that they will go there first. Meanwhile, Radu plans to split up from the group to clean up the mess left by his sister. Before leaving, Radu presents Shin with his magic sword, and he's doing so because he can't go on carrying a weapon from the underworld. Shin excitedly draws the sword, but is thrown away by the intense winds it releases. Then Jinka warns him that without spiritual power, he can't control it. But Tama reassures him, saying that keeping the sword close by will help him develop his own spiritual strength. Later, during a break, Tama takes a nap on Ashako's lap, but she soon wakes up when she smells something different. She runs into the forest asking everyone to follow her. They then encounter 3 monkey spirits carrying barrels of alcohol. Tama tries to exchange a radish for a barrel, but the monkeys explain that the alcohol is for their guest and suggest that she negotiate directly with him. Following the monkeys, they meet Doran the tiger, one of the 4 beast leaders of the Dangai temple. He reveals that he knows who they are, but he's not on a mission to capture them. But even so, he can't just ignore them because they're wanted criminal. To resolve the impasse, Tama suggests a drinking contest. If they win, Doran will let them go. He accepts, and they all sit down to drink. Jinka passes out with the first sip, while the others realize that the monkey's alcohol is incredible. During the competition, Tama asks Doran why he's there drinking. He tells her that a while ago, he fought a tiger spirit in the area and was wounded. At the time, he met the monkeys, who were being terrorized by the tiger, and using alcohol, he got the tiger drunk, weakened it, and managed to defeat it with the help of the monkeys. And since then, they have been good friends. Doran, still buoyed by the friendly atmosphere, tells Tama that she can ask him anything. She takes the opportunity to ask about Dinam's weakness, and he reveals that Dinam doesn't deal well with spicy food. Despite this, Doran declares that he alone is capable of defeating Dinam, as the two have been rivals for a long time. The drinking competition goes on until late, and Shako is the only one who manages to outdrink Doran, forcing him to accept defeat. The next morning, everyone wakes up hungover, except Dinka and Shako. Before they leave, Doran tells Dinka that the next time they meet, they'll have to fight. After that, the group continues their journey, and soon they reach a village protected by a barrier. Shako explains that Kagan wants to pass through the village, as it's the way to her hometown, but she doesn't know how to cross the barrier. Tama asks if there is a way through it, and Dinka suggests opening a small hole for one person to pass through, but Tama decides to negotiate first by jumping through the hole. She discovers that the village looks empty, and that there is no evidence of a trap. Suddenly, a masked slime spirit appears and introduces himself as Fuku. Tama asks if it was he who created the barrier, and Fuku confirms, saying that the barrier is to protect the village from changes. He then asks her if she ever wished that tomorrow wouldn't come, and although Tama denies it, Fuku manages to read her memories of the loss of a human friend, and Fuku feels sorry for Tama and invites her to follow him to be protected. Tama, however, says that the future isn't always bad and asks him to remove the barrier. Fuku refuses, provoking Tama, who slaps him back. Fuku runs away, and Tama chases the creature. Opening the door of a house, Tama comes across something horrible and is shocked and filled with grief. She calls Fuku for a peaceful chat and explains that although she has suffered from the loss of her friend, she has found new friends and is now happy. She insists that Fuku cannot stop the flow of time and asks him to fulfill his duty to protect the villagers, even if they have all died. The spirit is sad now, but Tama hugs him, saying that he did the best he could. She thanks Fuku for trying to save her too, and the spirit fills with tears. The spirit says it has no one left to protect, so it disappears because its role in this world is over, and that's how the barrier disappeared. Outside, Jinka and the others were waiting patiently, when suddenly another assassin sent by the temple arrived to kill them. He introduces himself as Hizin, one of the 4 beast leaders. Hizin believes that Jinka can't transform with Tama around, so he's about to draw his sword, but Jinka forbids him. He vows to defeat Hizin without Tama's powers. Suddenly, the assassin takes out a sword from his magic pouch, given to him by Yansen, and causes many blades to protrude from the sword to attack him with them. Suddenly, the barrier behind them disappears, distracting Jinka and giving Hizin a chance to hit him. However, Jinka returns to fight him after his spiritual transformation, and blows him away with a bronze fist attack. Tama then joins them and says that everything has been resolved peacefully. They must then return to their journey. Eventually, they reach a valley that Akagan claims is his village, but there doesn't seem to be any other form of life there. Suddenly, the walls of the valley begin to shake, and a giant face appears, welcoming Akagan into its home. They meet a variety of earth-type spirits, and while Zin does push-ups with baby stone spirits on his back, Tama comments that he's naturally getting involved with them. She tells Jinka that it's easy for humans and spirits to coexist, and asks him why he wants to become a spirit. He doesn't answer, but the reason he wants to become a spirit is so that he can increase his lifespan lifespan and be by Tama's side forever. While walking aimlessly, Jinka sees a pregnant woman in distress on the road and takes her to the spirit village. They talk to the giant stone face, who is the village elder. He allows the woman to stay in the village until she gives birth, and the Jinka has also made her swallow some talismans so that all the spirits look human to her. Tama decides that they will stay with her too until she is ready to leave. In the evening, Zin practices his sword swings at the top of the valley, and Shako comes to see him. She asks if it's really so important for him to become strong quickly, and he replies that everyone else besides him has achieved great things on their journey, and he's the only one who's weak. She says that he was the one who saved her when she was running away. Suddenly, she starts to blush, and after saying this, she tries to run away, but Kagan stops her because she also has business with the boy. Kagan asks Zin to draw her sword and promises to give her some advice on how to use it. Zin draws his sword, but the pressure of the wind sends it flying once again. Kagan then says that he isn't communicating with the sword. Zin tries to think of the sword as a person and realizes that it wouldn't accept him so easily because of its attachment to its former master. He tells Kagan that he also learned how to handle a sword from the ghost of a samurai, so he is a good listener when it comes to spirit. Kagan is impressed and tells him to keep training hard so that he can become a man worthy of marrying Shako. Zin turns red when he hears this, and even Shako blushes after regaining control of her body. She screams and runs away, but now Zin is determined to become someone worthy of her. The next day they visit the pregnant woman, and Shako feels the baby kicking. Tama tells Jinka to feel it too, but just as he's about to touch the woman's belly with his dirty hands, she goes into labor. At the same time, Daorin and Hizin arrive in the village, because they've been given the mission to hunt down Jinka this time, and while Hizin tries to threaten the village elder, Daorin slaps him and politely asks permission to duel with the enemy of the Dangai temple. The old man transmits the message to his guest, and in a few moments Jinka, Zin and Shako arrive to face him. Jinka is already in his spiritual transformation, and Daorin is very excited to face him. However, Hizin realizes that Tama is missing and sneaks off to find her. Daorin then declares that he too will show his true form now. He releases an insane amount of spiritual energy that devastates the ground, and then transforms into a human tiger. He immediately assumes a boxer's stance and advances towards Jinka, hitting him with a super fast flurry of punches. Jinka is knocked down, so he uses a flame attack on Daorin, who withstands everything. Jinka then whips him with a tree root, but even that proves useless. Daorin flexes his muscles with pride, then attacks Jinka again, who uses his bronze fists to counter his punch. The bronze fist is also destroyed, and Jinka is thrown through the air, but he puts all his strength into the next attack, and hits Daorin with the bronze fist. The destructive attack manages to knock the Tiger Man down, and does a lot of damage to him, but the Jinka suffers a lot too. Daorin stands up and declares that this is how real men should fight, and Jinka starts laughing like crazy. He realizes that he wants to keep fighting Daorin, and attacks him with his giant iron fists, and even though this is a fight to the death, they're both having fun and laughing like crazy. Shin and Shako can only stare at them, when suddenly King Shin appears behind them, and asks what they are protecting in this area. Shako attacks immediately, but he disappears because it was just an illusion. He snaps his fingers before disappearing, and suddenly a huge boulder breaks loose from the valley and starts rolling towards the hut, which is hidden with magic. Everyone is shocked to see this, and seeing Jinka distracted, Daorin hits him. Meanwhile, Shako and Kagan use all their strength to stop the rock from rolling towards the hut. As she struggles, she asks Shin to evacuate everyone from the hut, but an army of King Shin's clones block her path. Even Daorin is annoyed by her cowardly way of acting and attacks the clones, only to discover that they are all illusion. Shin thinks he can just run past the clones if they're fake, but suddenly the real King Shin flies at him and hits Shako in the chest. Shin can't control his anger and draws his sword, but King Shin hits him with some explosive talisman. Shin looks at Shako, who is still holding the stone, even with the open wound in her chest, and she says she's fine because she's a monster. Shin asks for help, and Tama says that he needs to hold on just a little longer because the baby is about to be born. However, Shako and Kagan realize that they don't have much time left, but they don't regret it. Shako remembers the happy times she had with Tama, Jinka, and Shin, and just as she is about to die, she hears the cries of her newborn baby. She smiles, hoping that the baby will live and be happy, and uses all her remaining strength to ensure that the baby survives. With her spiritual power, she turns her whole body into a rock, firmly preventing the stone from rolling away. The talismans that controlled the rock disappear soon after, and everyone is safe, but Shin is completely devastated. On the other hand, King Shin is about to kill Jinka when suddenly Daorin attacks him. King Shin dodges, but Daorin tells him that they are retreating and that if he insists, he will die right there. Jinka soon comes to his senses, and Daorin apologizes for letting his partner interfere in the battle. He promises that it won't happen next time and leaves calmly. Jinka then notices the rock and goes up to Shin to ask if he and Shako are all right. Shin just points to the rock in front of him, and Jinka is devastated to realize Shako's sacrifice. Suddenly, Tama calls him into the hut because the birth is finally over. The woman gave birth to twins and decided to name them Shako and Kagan. At this point, Jinka lets his emotions overflow into tears, and Tama can't hold back the tears either. Shin, on the other hand, has his jaw clenched with rage. What's more, he feels powerless. He quietly leaves the hut to mourn alone. A while later, the mother and her children are healthy enough to travel, and the local spirits offer to accompany them back home. The woman doesn't want to meddle in the group's problems, but comments that it would have been great if Shako had been able to see the children. After hearing this, Tama and the others also leave, and the village elder tells them that Shako isn't dead yet. Her spiritual energy still exists, although it is very weak. Maybe one day she can regain her strength and revive, but she could also end up becoming part of nature and lose her individuality. Later, we see everyone sitting in a hut, and Shin has changed drastically after losing Shako. He can communicate better with his magic sword, but at every moment he tells the sword to shut up, because soon he's going to use it to eliminate the monks of the Nangai temple. Suddenly, a spirit appears and Shin prepares to fight for no reason. Tama stops him and tells the spirit that she doesn't want to hurt him or his people. The spirit replies that if they want shelter, they shouldn't come to the village, but to a hut on the other side of the river, because it doesn't want to taint the village with the darkness that Shin carries. They rest in the hut, and Tama realizes that both Jinka and Shin have been destroyed by Shako's death. Jinka is still recovering, but Shin has lost himself in his rage, and she thinks this is not a good sign. Suddenly, she hears a boy talking to his sister outside. He complains that it's unfair for her to be sacrificed to the spirit to protect the village, but the girl replies that sacrificing a human every 4 years in exchange for total security is a very good deal. Hearing this, Shin gets up and leaves, determined to kill the spirit. Tama tries to stop him, saying that the terms of the agreement are acceptable and that the spirit actually protects the village. Shin grabs her collar, saying that it doesn't change the fact that he's devouring people. Jinka knocks him down for talking to Tama like that, but Shin just gets up and leaves, completely ignoring Tama's warning, who even throws a fake snake to scare him. However, Shin shouts at the snake, and it breaks the illusion. Tama chases him, and instead of stopping him, she gives him some protective equipment that they received from the village of the stone spirits, and she also asks him not to die. Shin moves on and reaches the forest. There, he calls out to the spirit, confident that he can kill it with his magic sword. The spirit appears, but before Shin can react, he is stabbed and killed by Raizen. Shin tries to attack him, but he can't draw his magic sword, so he just uses a normal sword. Raizen dodges the attack and knocks him down with the wind pressure of his sword blow. Raizen decides to finish off Shin, who is unconscious, but in fact Shin is inside the magic sword's mental realm. The spirit of the sword asks him to surrender, so that it can take control of his body and destroy everything. But Shin simply tells the spirit to shut up, because it's just a sword, and he's the one who controls it. He then sticks his hand in the spirit's mouth, demanding all its power, and in the real world Raizen is about to stab him, when suddenly Shin wakes up and slashes his arm. He then declares that this is the beginning of his revenge against the Dangai temple. But Raizen uses his special abilities to regenerate his arm instantly. He rips off his mask, revealing a very ugly face, and fires a spirit cannon at Shin, who barely manages to dodge. Raizen then throws a few swords at him, and Shin struggles to block them all. The sword spirit warns him that his anger won't make him stronger, only more vulnerable. Shin ignores the warning and continues to attack recklessly, and Raizen manages to disarm him, but Shin strikes back with a powerful sword blow, hitting Raizen with an uppercut and knocking him to the ground. He leaps up and starts punching him, but has to retreat when Raizen fires another spirit cannon. Raizen gets up and swears he's going to kill everyone, when suddenly, the guardian spirit of the village jumps on him and smashes his head against the ground with its last breath. The spirit dies soon afterwards, and Shin, though confused, doesn't let the opportunity pass. He picks up his sword and prepares to finish off the Raizen, determined to avenge Shako. However, he hears Shako's voice, and the illusion of her and Kagan talking to him appears before his eyes. They say that this kind of act doesn't suit him, and Shin shouts, saying that he's not doing it for them, but for himself. Even so, he can't finish the Raizen, because Shako's face keeps appearing in front of him. Suddenly, a talisman comes out of Raizen's body, and through it, Nyanzen starts talking to Shin. He asks Shin not to destroy Raizen's body, as it has cost him a lot of money and effort. He then orders Raizen to come back immediately, or he will activate his self-destruct protocol. Shin and Ryzen exchange glances and declare that the fight isn't over yet. But before Shin can do anything, Ryzen throws a smoke bomb and disappears. Later, Shin returns to the village, still confused about his own goal of becoming stronger. A villager approaches him and asks if he was the one who killed the guardian spirit. The man laments that the village is doomed, but Shin replies that the villagers should protect it on their own, rather than relying on others to do the dirty work. The villager complains that no one there knows how to hold a sword, and Shin angrily tells him to die if he can't become stronger. Even talking to Nuriza, he is still lost, not knowing what exactly to do with his own life. He crosses the bridge and finds his friends waiting for him. They decide to leave the village quickly, before the villagers turn against them. But before leaving, the girl Shin saved from being sacrificed thanks him. At night, Tama asks Shin what he's going to do now, and he replies that he's going to become strong enough to avenge Shako and make sure that the monks of the Dangai temple don't ruin anyone else's life. Later, while Tama and Jinka sleep, Shin continues practicing his sword stroke without resting. The next day, they arrive in a spooky valley where two giant spirits called Tengo appear to welcome them, along with their boss, a very seductive woman. She says she has learned that the Tenjin group is an enemy of the Dangai temple and says she is interested in becoming their ally. The woman invites the group to follow her and on the way introduces herself as a mountain goddess. She says she wants to take them to a safe place where they can relax and hide from the Dangai dragon man. Shin asks if it isn't dangerous for her to walk around without a bodyguard, but the goddess replies that she doesn't need protection. She says that Jinka, with his fairy eyes, should be able to sense this, but Jinka doesn't seem to care and doesn't even realize how strong she is. The mountain goddess then takes them to her hiding place, a cave in the mountains full of glittering crystal pillars. Meanwhile, in another part of the valley, the dragon priest Jin Un and his assistant Senya arrive at the entrance and ask the Tengu guards for passage. They refuse, claiming that they have orders from their master to stop intruders. But Jin Un doesn't intend to back down either. He orders Senya to fight the guards, and the boy turns his arms into sharp weapons, eliminating the Tengu in an instant. The Jin Un is satisfied with his apprentice's performance, but suddenly the dead Tengu turn into crows, revealing that it was all just an illusion to confuse the invaders. Senya realizes that he has fallen for the trick, but Jin Un believes that this experience will help him grow. Back in the cave, Tama and her friends are sitting on top of the highest pillar, and the mountain goddess tells them that they can ask any question. She explains that she found out about them from the stone-faced elder, who in this case is an old friend of hers. Although she seems friendly, Tama realizes that the goddess wants a favor and asks her to get straight to the point. The mountain goddess then asks them to wake up Tazin, a castle-like spirit who is guarding the Dangai research facility. She explains that Tazin is also a mountain god, like her, but the Dangai priests have brainwashed him into serving them. She says that they just need to hit him with a strong blow, and that will bring him back to normal. But the group doesn't believe it's that simple. Then the mountain goddess assures them that she herself will do some of the spanking, but she needs them to take her to where Tazin is. She says that this is a good deal for them, because with it, they can take away one of the three main powers of the Dangai temple. Jinka believes that the dragon is the second power, and asks what the third is, and the mountain goddess replies that the third power is a spirit called Kuzunoha, and Tama is terrified to hear this name. Jinka wants to know more about Kuzunoha, and the mountain goddess begins to tell the story. She explains that many years ago a man joined the Dangai monks and dedicated his life to research. One day he was sent to subdue a nine-tailed fox called Kuzunoha, but on seeing her he fell in love at first sight, and it wasn't just him. Kuzunoha fell in love with him too. The man then killed his own team for her, and the two became a couple. That monk was Yanzan, who is now the head priest of the Dangai temple. Tama is completely shocked by this story, and when Shin and Jinka look at her, she is embarrassed and reveals that Kuzunoha is actually her mother, which means that Yanzan is her stepfather. The mountain goddess tells a story, saying that Yanzan claimed that Kuzunoha was defeated in battle, but in fact he hid her, and spent years researching ways to turn spirits into human. Everyone realizes that the spiritually enhanced humans are just failed prototypes of Yanzan's experiments, and this makes Shin swear to kill him. Tama agrees, and says that her mother was always a fool when she fell in love, so they should be prepared to face her too. Suddenly, a flock of crows flies towards them. A girl jumps over them and lands on Shin's head. She warns the mountain goddess that the dragon man is meditating to break the spell she put on him to confuse him. Shin attacks the girl for not apologizing to him, but when she turns around, she sees Jinka and falls in love with him. Jinka rejects her on the spot, saying that she's human and that he only likes monster girls, and he also asks what she's doing there, and the mountain goddess explains that she met a girl one day and decided to adopt her. She introduces the girl as Rinzu, her assistant and apprentice. The goddess then projects the image of Dinam meditating and decides to play a trick on him. She sends a female spirit to seduce him, and Dinam immediately covers his disciple's eyes so that he doesn't see the indecent woman. After watching the scene and having a bit of fun, he shouts for her to leave. At the same moment, the girl transforms into Waxenum, which was her true form, and flees. The goddess laughs at this and orders all the spirits in the valley to distract the dragon, buying time for her new allies to train. Tama says that time is short, so the goddess slows down the flow of time in the place so that they can train without haste. She explains that there is no upper limit to their potential and sends them for separate training. First, she takes care of Jinka, who is sent to an open place. He meets his master, Coco, and the mountain goddess comments that Coco was a pervert of the first rank who was always hitting on her, and she scolded him so much that it ended up helping him become the strongest of the world's wise warriors. She then summons Rinzu and proposes a challenge. If she defeats Jinka, she will win a spell that will make him hers forever. Rinzu gets very excited, and the goddess tells Jinka that he must fight with everything, because neither he nor she can die in this space. Without waiting, Rinzu summons a large axe and attacks Jinka before he can even prepare himself. She cuts off his arm, and he is horrified, but soon realizes that his arm is back to normal. Confused, he just dodges the blows while trying to understand what is happening. But Rinzu goes on to change the shape of the axe into a hammer, and then into a giant paw, attacking in all sorts of ways. Jinka realizes that she's holding back, so she invokes explosive talismans and fires them at him. As Jinka dodges, the mountain goddess decides to tell him about his fairy eyes. She explains that people with special spiritual power are born with fairy eyes, and people with this kind of power always come into the world as twins. Rinzu gets distracted, imagining that there might be another beautiful Jinka out there, and he takes advantage of this to hit her over the head. He's not surprised by the story either, as he's already seen his twin brother, who lives happily with his parents. The goddess reveals that when twins with fairy eyes live together, evil spirits surround them, which is why Master Coco suggested that his parents send him to her. Jinka screams, asking why he had to be sent away and live a life of hardship while his brother lived comfortably. The goddess just laughs, saying that his reaction is proof that he is still human. She feels sorry for him and comments that his existence is really unhappy. But Jinka retorts, saying that despite the difficulties, he has also had happy time, so he doesn't consider himself unhappy. Suddenly, something inside him breaks, and he sees the goddess covered in an intense spiritual aura. She congratulates him on finally accepting his place in the world, and that was the key to breaking the silo of his fairy eyes. Now Jinka can see everyone's spiritual energy, including Rinzu. He realizes that her explosive talismans have almost no power, and he doesn't even need to dodge anymore. He also perceives his own aura, so he understands that what he is seeing is people's souls, and that there is no difference between humans and spirit. Rinzu continues to attack, but he simply holds her hands and asks her to surrender. She surrenders immediately, clings to him and smiles. The mountain goddess tells him that he has passed the test, but he still has more training ahead of him. Meanwhile, Tama's test involves honing her spiritual power to walk across a lake. The mountain goddess creates a clone to distract her, causing her to lose focus. On the other hand, Shin comes across a huge rock blocking his path. He tries to cut through it with the power of his magic sword, but it doesn't work, so he decides to use the wind to fly past the rock. But at that moment, the sky opens up, and he returns to the real world, with the goddess's clone attached to him. She comments that despite appearing to be the most inattentive of the group, he was the first to pass the test, and with no preparation for landing, they fall into the forest, where they find Xenia playing with a toy left by a spirit to distract him. Shin tries to use the power of his sword to cushion his fall, but still ends up colliding with Xenia. When the dust settles, he finds himself with a sword pointed at Xenia's neck. Shin panics, but a clone of the goddess tells him that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She explains that the dragon's discipline is much stronger than his, and that he's only just beginning. She asks Shin to kill Xenia, and even Xenia himself agrees, but Shin asks them to shut up. But the clone insists that if he lets the boy go, he will destroy him in an instant, and one day he will become stronger than a dragon. She sees the thousands of spirits trapped in Xenia's body, giving her the potential to become a true demon. Horrified, Shin starts crying at the fact that the temple didn't spare a boy and turned him into a monster. Xenia gets up and turns his hand into a weapon, and Shin just asks him to be quick. Xenia swings his arm, but doesn't hurt Shin. Instead, he smashes the toy he was playing with, and curses his situation and runs away. The clone praises Shin as the man who let the future Spirit King live, and says that they must return to their training, while the mountain goddess says that to finish his training, Jinka must fight the dragon. Jinka panics and says that there's no chance of that happening, but she continues to insist, and he admits that he might have a 1 in 1 chance of defeating it, and the goddess agrees, saying that all he needs is a miracle. She sends him straight to Dinun, who is having a quiet lunch. Jinka falls into the river and is carried away by the current, while Dinun wonders if it was another illusion. Meanwhile, Tama takes off her clothes, which get heavy and uncomfortable every time she falls into the lake. She wants to refine her spiritual power by staying on the lake for as long as possible, but loses her balance when she hears that Shin and Jinka have passed the test. When she emerges, the clone of the goddess tells her that she may have 1,000 years to train in this space, and she has two options. One is to succeed, and the other is to lose her mind from trying so hard. Tama sits down to meditate, and will make the most of her time. In the evening, Shin and Jinka are back at the hut with Rinzo's clone, who says that today's training has taught them to be ready for unexpected encounters. Suddenly, Tama walks in, looking quite distant, and acts as if she's seen her friends after a long time. The clone says that they are now ready to launch an attack on the Dangai Temple headquarters. Meanwhile, she will place a spell on the mountain to keep Dinam occupied for a few days. However, Tama believes that they should take this chance to defeat Dinam first, but the clone tells them that they are not strong enough for that yet. However, Tama has a plan, and believes that this is the best opportunity to carry it out. When the clone and Rinzo leave, Tama explains that she plans to take the mountain goddess into battle against the dragon priest. The boys don't think this will work, but Tama believes it will, because the goddess sees some value in their lives. Otherwise, she wouldn't have put so much effort into training them. The next day, they walk towards Dinam's location. Tama explains that they will follow an attack and escape strategy to take him to the Kuval of the mountain goddess. Soon, they spot Dinam, and Tama is about to share her power with Jinka when suddenly Osin appears and throws him out. The next moment, Jinka finds Dinam next to him, who turns into a dragon to execute him. Jinka is terrified at the sight of Dinam's immense spiritual aura and thinks the fight will be over. However, Dinam misses the first attack because the ground is more fragile than he expected. He attacks again, but by a stroke of luck, the ground beneath his feet collapses, and Jinka dodges that attack too. Tama and Shin can only watch him survive, while Senya holds them hostage. On the ground, Jinka remembers what the goddess told him about performing the miracle that will allow him to defeat the dragon, and starts laughing like crazy. Dinun is surprised by his sudden laughter, but attacks him anyway. However, all he hits is a paper doll, so the Jinka uses his talismans to send swords in his direction. Dinun smashes them all with one kick, and realizes that the Jinka behind him is just an illusion. He thinks the Jinka will attack him from the sky, but this is also a hoax, and the real Jinka appears next to Tama and takes her away. He drinks her blood and turns into a spirit. This time he has 5 tails instead of 4, because Tama has increased her spiritual capacity after meditating for 10 years in the strange space. Tama watches Jinka face the dragon and wonders if he can master the technique that comes with the 5th tail. Jinka realizes that he has 3 times more power than before, but it's still not enough to defeat Dinun. Dinun gives him the chance to strike first, and Jinka turns his 5th tail into a giant sword to attack him. Dinun dodges easily, but finds that Jinka is no longer in front of him. He used the giant sword as a distraction to sneak up behind the dragon man, and there he used his finishing move, which combines the power of the 5 elements. Jinka sends the giant ball full of explosive spiritual energy towards Dinun, who sends an explosion with his dark spiritual energy, thus rebounding the attack. When the smoke clears, we see that Jinka and Dinun have lost an arm. Jinka is bleeding profusely, and is afraid of dying because of it. This fear forces his hidden power, and a 6th tail made of lightning manifests on his body. Dinun realizes that he is too dangerous to be left alone, and leaps high into the sky to finish the Jinka off with his finishing kick. The Jinka also launches his lightning bolt towards him, but before they can face each other, a clone of the mountain goddess appears between them and stops them from fighting. With just a flick of her finger, she presses down on Jinka and summons a hill and some sturdy vines to trap Dinun. She tells them to slow down their attacks, or they'll end up damaging her mountain. Senya is shocked that she stopped her master's final attack so easily, and Shin thinks that Tama's plan has worked, and that they've managed to bring the mountain goddess into the battle. She understands this too, and tells Jinka that they've already made her understand, but then shows her dark side, and says that dragging her into this fight will cost them dearly. At that moment, Dinun unleashes his power and destroys the hill that was holding him. The clone of the goddess tells him that he can't win a fight against her, and uses his immense spiritual pressure to ask him to apologize and run away. Dinun tells him firmly that he will fulfill his mission, and asks the clone to leave. She says she likes his masculine attitude, and suddenly sends giant arms of earth to grab him and push him into the earth's surface. Senya panics at the sight of this, and rushes to attack the goddess clone. She grabs him too, and as she seals the hole into which she threw Dinan, Senya screams, calling Dinan father. The clone traps Dinan in a ball of resistant vines. Meanwhile, Jinka's spirit transformation is undone, and he collapses. Tama and Rinzu rush to help him, and the goddess clone realizes that Jinka has lost a lot of blood, so she takes a seed from her sleeve and buries it in his wounded hand, sealing the wound. However, the clone makes it clear that she still hasn't forgotten the price they must pay for having manipulated her. Tama asks what she wants, and the real goddess of the mountain suddenly emerges from the ground. She says that she will probably consume Tama and Jinka's souls once they have completed their journey. Shin wonders if she's serious about eating them, then looks at Jinka's arm, realizing that he's still a burden to the group. Afterwards, the group sets off with Rinzu in search of the mountain spirit called Tazan, with the aim of rescuing him. Meanwhile, the high priest learns that Dinan and Senya have been captured and that Jinka and his group are closing in. The high priest informs Daorin that although Jinka is injured, he will probably be stronger than before. Daorin, excited by the idea of a fight, advises the high priest to diversify his force, as relying on Durham alone will not be sustainable in the long term. He leaves to prepare for the next fight, while the high priest considers whether he should release the second batch of spiritually enhanced humans. Soon, Daorin meets the second group, who call themselves the 10 Saints. They challenge him to a fight, claiming that they are superior and that he is no longer needed in the temple. Daorin transforms into his tiger form, and the 10 Saints assume their bestial forms. But Daorin defeats them in a few minutes and complains that the new generation is too weak. Meanwhile, Jinka finally wakes up after being unconscious since his battle with Dinan. He seems sad to have lost an arm, but surprises everyone by hugging Tama and saying that her plan worked. He feels relieved that they got Dinan out of the way at the cost of just one arm. Tama, however, doesn't have the heart to tell her that the mountain goddess wants to devour her soul. Rinzo thinks her attitude is masculine, but Jinka can't even remember her name. Shin is baffled by how Jinka can laugh even after losing an arm, but Tama explains that they have no choice but to accept. She asks Shin to smile too, but he declares that he has no right to smile since he couldn't save Shako. Tama tries to console him, saying that Shako could still come back to life in a few centuries, and Shin agrees that that would be very nice and leave. Just then, Jinka asks him to buy some cookies on the way. Jinka comments that despite having lost his arm, he feels he's in his best shape. Tama agrees and says that they will resume their journey the next day. The next morning, Rinzo hands out talismans to the group, asking them to write their names on them. She explains that this will allow her to use her summoning technique to call them in times of need. Jinka doubts her ability, while Shin doesn't even understand the concept. Rinzo decides to prove her abilities by summoning a raven from her mountain, surprising everyone. She also plans to use the talismans to summon other spirits who want to fight against the Langai Temple, but Tama forbids it. She makes it clear that their fight is for justice and to reform the world, not for revenge. Rinzo then agrees to only summon other spirits in case of extreme necessity. The group finally arrives at the Dangai Temple headquarters, and they decide to enter through the front gate again. Before that, Tama calls Jinka for a moment alone. She exposes her shoulder so that he can drink her blood, which will increase his spiritual power much more. As Jinka approaches, he reveals his wishes. If he manages to transform completely into a spirit after obtaining the Dangai's research material, his dream is to marry Tama. Tama blushes when Jinka confesses his desire to marry her. She tries to joke about the situation, saying that she'll have to grow her body first. Otherwise, the spectators will find it very wrong. Jinka agrees and advances by biting her shoulder. Tama feels a special chill this time, and thanks to this, Jinka finally transforms into a full spirit, this time manifesting 6 tails. The two return to the group, determined to enter the headquarters of the Dangai Temple together, as everyone there has business to settle with the monks and their associate. As they pass through the main gate, they come across Daorin, who is waiting for them alone. All the other monks are positioned to protect the other exit. Without wasting any time, Daorin transforms into his tiger form, and the first fight begins. Jinka lunges forward with his bronze punch, but Daorin easily shatters it, countering with a powerful blow and knocking him to the ground. The Jinka tries to attack him with his staff, but the attack is useless. He then tries to use another wooden tail, but Daorin dodges and sends him flying with a well-placed punch. Meanwhile, Shin, who is at the limit of his patience, notices a clone of King Shin sneaking through the shadows. Without hesitation, he draws his sword and strikes it, eliminating the clone instantly. From afar, the real King Shin laughs and teases Shin, inviting him to join him in a fight. He quickly leaves, and Tama asks Shin not to shout for help if he's in danger. Back in the main battle, Jinka tries to use his lightning tail to attack Daorin, but fails by mischanneling his spiritual energy, giving Daorin a chance to counterattack. The two continue to exchange blows, while Daorin reflects on his old fears of becoming an inferior fighter. He remembers that he chased Dinam, a much stronger opponent, and that now, even though Jinka has more spiritual energy, he can still beat him. Jinka, lying on the ground, realizes that he has overestimated his own abilities, but gets up with renewed determination. Jinka decides to perform a real miracle, invoking the techniques of all his tails simultaneously to attack Daorin. Despite this, Daorin manages to push him away, but Jinka laughs, saying that he is beginning to understand his opponent's movements. With the help of his fairy eyes, he is now able to predict Daorin's next blows, precisely observing where his spiritual energy accumulates. When Daorin tries to attack him again, Jinka feels something unusual. A ball of spiritual energy appears where his destroyed left hand used to be, and at just the right moment he unleashes a juice with this new energy hand, hitting Daorin and sending him flying. Tama is shocked by the scene, while Rinzu believes that this is the result of the power of the seed that the mountain goddess planted in his arm. Daorin laughs, saying that he felt the impact of the blow, but warns that the fight from now on will be special. He concentrates his spiritual energy in his fists, and suddenly dozens of spiritual orbs appear around him, forming a terrifying spectacle. Meanwhile, Shin continues to follow King Shin, managing to cut open a bag he was carrying, but the bag explodes, revealing it to be a fake trap. King Shin continues to tease and lead Shin into a cave lit by candles. As he progresses, the cave becomes more and more sophisticated, until it looks like a complete installation. Shin encounters a wounded monk on the way and, overcome with rage, attacks him. But the monk turns out to be one of the 10 saints and transforms to block the attack. The monk asks him how Shin managed to break into the heart of the laboratory, but Shin ignores him, saying he only wants King Shin. Suddenly, the monk is stabbed in the heart by a giant blade. Behind him is King Shin, who transforms into a gigantic creature. Shin dodges the harpoon fired by King Shin, but barely has time to recover before he is faced with cannons aimed directly at him. King Shin fires his spirit cannons, and Shin uses his sword's wind magic to cling to the wall and dodge the attacks, then punches King Shin in the face. This enrages his opponent, who attacks again, but Shin floats in the air, dodging nimbly. In an unexpected move, Shin changes strategy and starts running away, forcing King Shin to follow him. Meanwhile, in the main temple, Jinka is in a fierce fight against Daorin, who hits him with a series of incredibly fast punches, and even though he tries to protect himself with his bronze fists, Jinka is knocked out instantly. But thanks to his impressive willpower, he gets up, and Daorin recognizes his courage, and explains that his technique distorts space-time, which allows him to deliver hundreds of blows in a single second. He also reveals that this is only the initial phase of his technique, and he still plans to develop it further. Jinka, still dizzy from the blows, realizes that his left hand, now made up of spiritual energy, can help him calm his mind. He shocks everyone by shoving this energy hand into his own brain, unlocking a new level of power. He manifests a seventh tail, made of a windstorm. The fight resumes, and Jinka uses his new tail to increase his speed, hitting Daorin before he can react. The confident Daorin says that the same technique doesn't work twice against him, and in response, the Jinka combines the 5 elements in his final attack. He surrounds Daorin with lightning and wind attacks and tries to limit him. Despite this, Daorin relies on his own speed to escape and attack Jinka, and just as he is about to hit him, several mysterious figures appear behind them, interrupting the fight. Confused, Daorin and Jinka stop, and the next instant Daorin is hit by Jinka's powerful spirit bomb. Tama runs up to Jinka, asking if he saw the strange figures, and he confirms it. But before they can understand what has happened, Daorin emerges from the smoke, covered in wounds. He accepts his defeat, offering his head to Jinka, but Tama intervenes, saying that there's no need for anyone to kill anyone anymore. Daorin admits that he had a great time, and then collapses. Watching from afar, Yanzang is shocked to see that Daorin has been defeated, and panics, saying that he needs to run away, and the person next to him just laughs at him. Meanwhile, Shin deals with King Shin in a room full of pillars. He uses these pillars to dodge King Shin's attacks, while debating with his magic sword, which suggests taking him into open spaces to unleash its full power. Distracted by the conversation, Shin is almost hit by King Shin's spirit cannons. The magic sword then decides to act, charging Shin with its will, and making King Shin open a hole in the ceiling. The sword makes Shin fly out, but King Shin follows him using jet thrusters in his mechanical armor. In heaven, the fight continues. Shin and King Shin exchange blows with their swords, and the magic sword becomes philosophical, asking Shin to look to the sky and free himself from his earthly desires. Inspired, Shin concentrates all his power into a single attack. So he cuts up King Shin and his mechanical armor, splitting them in half, but King Shin survives among the wreckage. He tries one last attack, but Shin disarms him, and the two start exchanging juices. Shin finally lands a devastating blow, destroying the artificial body of King Shin, who loses consciousness forever. Shin falls to his knees and screams as he realizes that King Shin is dead. Meanwhile, Jinka approaches his magic sword, now conscious and transformed into a spirit. Tama suggests that Shin go home and rest, but he refuses, saying that he won't rest as long as the monsters who created the spiritually naturally enhanced humans continue to exist. As they walk, Shin asks Jinka if he still wants to become a spirit, and they both agree that inside, spirits and humans are the same. Jinka mentions that he has found a way to transform his body into a spirit, but Tama forbids him from doing anything that involves modifying his brain. The two stare at each other intensely, but are interrupted when the ground begins to shake. Rinzu sends her raven to explore the area, and the raven discovers something worrying the mountain god. Tazin has awakened. The huge walking fortress is fast approaching, which is a great danger to them all. Without wasting any time, Rinzu decides to invoke the mountain goddess, hoping that she can put things in order, but to everyone's surprise, the invocation doesn't seem to work, and Tazin tries to crush them with his giant step. The group flees, and Rinzu reassures them, explaining that a being as powerful as the mountain goddess takes time to manifest. Fortunately, the goddess appears, bringing with her an entire mountain, yes, a mountain with legs. The goddess looks at Tazin and declares that it's time for him to rest. Then with a single blow, she strikes him down. The gigantic fortress falls to the ground, and inside it Yazen and Kuzunoha are completely terrified. She talks to Yazen and tells him that he now has only one option. She exposes her shoulder, and Yazen bites her without hesitation. At that moment, a golden light begins to radiate from the ruined fortress, and Jinka soon notices a familiar sensation. Yazen emerges from the fortress, transformed into a nine-tailed fox spirit, carrying Kuzunoha in his arms. Tama watches the scene, and at the same time, Jinka tells her to go ahead. They fly towards Yazen and Kuzunoha, while Shin also prepares to act. Hinzo seizes the moment and asks Shin to take her along, and in the midst of the chaos, Yazen asks Kuzunoha who Tama's father is. Kuzunoha, with an enigmatic smile, answers him with a question, asking if he really wants to know. Yazen decides to drop the subject, and suggests that they concentrate their efforts on escaping, especially with the mountain goddess before them. But the goddess doesn't intend to let them go unpunished. She fires pine trees like missiles, which explode when they hit their target. Yazen creates a powerful metal barrier to block the attack, proclaiming that human knowledge can overcome monsters like the goddess. The provocation infuriates the goddess even more, who sets the whole mountain ablaze with intense flame. Seeing that the situation is untenable, Yazen and Kuzunoha immediately flee. Tama, however, doesn't want to let them get away. She asks Jinka to throw her in their direction. He obeys, using his bronze fist to propel her, and so Tama hits Kuzunoha with a direct kick to the face. Jinka also reaches Yazen, and unleashes his tails to attack him, but Yazen, now in his fox form, neutralizes his attacks with ease. He uses two of his remaining tails to counterattack, and Jinka can barely defend himself with his staff. At this point, the mountain goddess decides to interrupt her own attack to avoid putting her apprentice at risk. Yazen then turns his attention to Tama, irritated by the blow she has dealt his beloved. Tama, however, tells him to shut up, saying that this is strictly a family matter. Tama confronts her mother about her choices, and Yazen, wanting to intervene, ends up being stopped by Jinka. And while the two exchange blows, Yazen complains and begins to consider fleeing with a hostage. During the fight, Jinka asks Yazen about his experiments and his relationship with Koko, but Yazen just laughs, refusing to answer, which leads Jin to attack him even harder. Meanwhile, Tama lectures her mother, but Kuzunoha just laughs, saying that when you love a man, you have to accept him as he is. However, Tama rebukes her, saying that Jinka and Genzo, who in this case is Jinka's father, would never commit unforgivable acts like Yanzen does. Kuzunoha, intrigued, asks if Tama ever fell in love with Genzo, saying that if that's the case, she ended up falling in love with father and son. The provocation leaves Tama momentarily speechless, but she recovers and declares that she doesn't understand romantic love. Instead, she claims to love all humans for who they are. Tama recalls her first encounters with Genzo and Jinka, reinforcing that her love is for humanity as a whole. Kuzunoha, for her part, tries to convince her to join them, arguing that Yanzen can turn her into a human, but Tama refuses, saying that her friends accept her as she is, and determined, she vows to stop Yanzen at all costs. But just then, Kuzunoha comments that Jinka is turning into something inhuman. When Tama turns around, she realizes that Jinka is desperate, eating spiritual parts to increase his power. He smiles uneasily and says that the flesh of a god is really tasty. Even Yanzen is shocked, because he realizes that Jinka has just devoured the goddess's body to absorb her power. He warns Jinka that the consequences will not be good. Suddenly, a painful sensation overwhelms Jinka's body, and his last two tails, one of light and one of darkness, emerge. Yanzen warns Jinka that he is entering dangerous territory, and that at this rate he won't remain human for long. The two begin an intense battle, and they move so fast towards the others that it's only possible to see the trails of light cutting through the air. Jinka seems to have the upper hand, and manages to push Yanzen back, but his sanity is crumbling in the process. Still, when Tama calls his name, he regains consciousness for a moment. Seeing the opening, Yanzen tries to hypnotize him and counterattack. However, Jinka loses control again and advances. It's at this moment that Yanzin reveals a summoning talisman, and just as Jinka is about to hit him, Tama appears in front of the attack and is pierced. But it's all just an illusion, and Kuzendoha kidnaps the real Tama and disappears. Jinka, believing he has killed Tama, is consumed by a pain so intense that he radiates a very dark energy and screams in agony. He lunges at Yanzin, completely enraged, but before he can hit him, something happens and Jinka finds himself trapped in his own mind, confused and screaming. While his uncontrolled body continues to fight Yanzin in the air, Kuzunoha holds Tama hostage as she watches the scene and laughs, commenting that Jinka has become something completely inhuman. Shin realizes that Tama is missing, and deduces that Kuzunoha has taken her. He asks Rinzu to find her, while he decides to support Jinka in the fight. Rinzu tries to stop him, saying it's suicide, but Shin is determined to make Yanzin pay for his crimes. Meanwhile, Yanzin uses illusions to surround the furious Jinka, attacking him from all sides. Trapped in his mind, Jinka realizes that the Tama he killed was just an illusion, but the pain of that moment has made him lose control. He tries to come to his senses, but Yanzin manipulates him, guiding him towards the mountain goddess. Yanzin plans to use Jin as a distraction to escape, and when Jinka advances to attack Yanzin, Shin appears by surprise and manages to wound him with a deep cut, but also injures himself in the process. Shin falls to the ground, badly injured, and Jinka, seeing Shin bleeding, feels something inside him break. He lies still for a moment, and then the energy of the forest begins to flow towards him. The mountain goddess panics when she sees this, and orders her crows to retrieve Rinzu immediately. She decides that they need to get out of there before the Jinka drains all the life force from the area. Kuzunoha is also shocked by the sight, and distracted, she loosens her grip on Tama, who takes advantage of it to run towards Jinka. The goddess realizes that Yanzin's body that Jinka consumed, with some remnants of her power, is acting as a catalyst, allowing him to absorb the power of the forest and the mountain. She declares that Jinka is becoming a divine beast, something even more powerful than a nine-tailed fox, and that he will destroy everything before he dies. The Jinka's tails infuse into one, while the surrounding trees wither and die. It transforms into a monstrous beast with dozens of tails. At that moment, Tama's spiritual powers return to her, causing her to grow rapidly. The now out-of-control Jinka advances against Rinzu and the crows. The mountain goddess uses her power to save Rinzu, teleporting her along with the whole mountain. Meanwhile, 5 mysterious figures appear in the sky and freeze time. The goddess, confused, feels that these presences are weak, but she can't ignore them. Everything is frozen, but Jinka, in his bestial form, manages to grab one of the mysterious figures, ready to devour it. Just then, Tama intervenes and kicks him in the face, ordering him to stop this madness. Jinka grabs her by the neck, and the conscious part of him screams at his mind to stop. Tama stares at him and says something very funny, saying that he's beautiful, even while strangling her. Her words make Jinka regain some control. He lets go of Tama, who hugs him and reminds him of his words about marrying her when he became a spirit. She says she was happy to hear that, and with tears in her eyes, she kisses him. However, Tama senses Hinzo summoning her with the talisman she had received. Even against her choice, she is pulled away with Shin, disappearing in front of Jinka. It's at that moment that her energy blast hits, devastating the entire area and even destroying the mountain goddess's transmission dummy. Days later, Shin is still recovering from his injuries, and determined, Tama sets off on a journey to find Jinka. Hinzo is worried, since even the mountain goddess couldn't detect Jinka after his explosion, but Tama still believes he's alive and vows to find him, even if she has to do it alone.